Are you looking for an internet talk radio station for your podcast? Look no further. At the helm of Passionate World Talk Radio are two women that want to provide a spot for you and your podcast to be heard. There are many other places for your podcast, but PWTR has the audience. You will not be disappointed. Our station has been on the internet for the past 16 years. Call us for more information. 484-364-1032 or text Jeannie White, station manager at THECONNECTSHOW@gmail.com for podcast show details. Welcome to Passionate World Talk Radio. Educate, enlighten, entertain.
Hello, everybody. This is Betsy Roosevelt, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio, where our mantra is to educate, enlighten, entertain. Folks, do you often wonder why I can't even talk, why politicians' wives stay in their marriages when they know that their husbands are having affairs? You're going to want to listen to my guest today because she wrote a book. I'm going to tell you about my guest. With me today is Anne Michaud. She is an award-winning and veteran political journalist. She's a best-selling author. And while she was working for the Wall Street Journal, Anne was awarded Columnist of the Year by the New York News Publishers Association. And the name of her book is Why They Stay: Sex Scandals, Deals, and Hidden Agendas of 8 Political Wives. I want to welcome Anne Michaud to Chatting with Betsy. Welcome, Anne.
Hi, Betsy. Thank you. Nice to be here.
Oh, thank you very much. I have often wondered that same question myself, Anne. So I always ask the authors, what motivated you to write this book?
Well, we were in 2014, I think it was, and I was talking with my literary agent, and she said, no, Hillary Clinton is going to run for president, and I don't think anybody has really looked at the question of why the women stay in these marriages when the men cheat in the political marriages. There's been a lot of analysis of the men, why they cheat, but not the other side of it, and I think people would be interested in knowing. So I started writing about Hillary and then looking around for other couples where the wife had stayed in the marriage even though she knew about cheating, and just political couples, though. And I published a first edition. It was supposed to come out as Hillary was becoming president, and as we know, that didn't happen. And so after that edition came out, I thought, well, I was going on a book tour, and people were saying, well, what about the Trumps? What about Melania Trump? And so I decided to publish a second edition and include the Trumps in there. So that's the one that came out last June.
Oh, okay. I have often wondered that same question myself, and, I feel as a woman that it's bad enough, a regular everyday couple, when you find out that your husband's cheating on you. But if you are in politics and it's there, headline news, I can't even imagine the humiliation and the embarrassment that they must have. But, in staying with their husband, and sometimes I'm sure it's a power thing, why do they stay with them? Is it power? Is it the prestige, social status, all of the above?
Partly, sure. Yeah, I went through all the different biographies of these women, and started coming up with some common reasons why they do stay in the marriage. I think a few of them you would find in most marriages, if there was a similar scenario, they have particular reasons in their background for wanting security. They have a traditional sense of marriage is forever. They feel responsible for the family's emotional health. But then I also found that there were a couple of reasons that were particular to political couples. One was a personal sense of patriotism, that they had sort of signed on to this marriage with an idea of what they were going to do in the world in terms of, making the world better, trying to run for office, pursuing various policy goals. And the other one was that they had a sort of sense of themselves. I called it ambition to build and bequeath a legacy. But, they have, they're written about, they're public couples. They have a sense of what they're building and who they are that's sort of maybe a little bit larger than life. And so they consider that too. And you might want to call it status, but I think it's also, hoping that they can ride this out and it will be okay for their children, that sort of thing.
Do they feel do you think, and let me put it this way, do you think they might also have low self-esteem and they want to stay with this person because maybe they feel they can't find someone else or would have a lack of trust with someone else?
Yeah, I definitely found, as I mentioned earlier, they have something in their background that makes them want to have a security. And I definitely found with all of these women that there was some painful things in their past that they were trying to get over.
We had a governor of New Jersey, former governor of New Jersey. I'm just going to put this out there. I won't mention the name because people probably will know who I'm talking about. And his first wife left very quietly. No big fanfare. Second wife they had a very nasty divorce. It was public. Mm. Do they try to avoid that part of it? We won't get a divorce because it might get very nasty. Then it wouldn't look good for the politician if he wants to run again. Is there also that side of it?
Oh, definitely, yeah. You definitely see that there's an effort to maintain the electability of the husband, factoring into all of these. I mean, even as far back as Eleanor Roosevelt, her FDR's mother threatened to cut them off financially if they got a divorce, and she very much was thinking about whether her son would be able to run for office again. Let's see, who else? Oh, I think, a really good example. I mean, the Spitzers. Eliot Spitzer was governor of New York, and his wife, Hilda, ended up staying with him until he mounted a campaign for city controller. And then as soon as he lost in the primary, they split up. So I really felt as though they were staying together, especially so that, the critics didn't have that to feed on when he was trying to make his next move politically.
I think it's really incredible, such as Hillary and Bill Clinton. It's been talked about in the papers that Hillary stayed with Bill Clinton for the power, because she wanted to become president, and hopefully that he would have helped her to get to be president, which didn't happen. But she's still with him. And even though he had this huge scandal, and she knew that he was cheating on her. So is it also, like in Hillary's case, their own political ambitions to climb up the ladder?
Maybe. I mean, I think there's a couple in here, Wendy and David Vitter, who are less well known, and he was a U.S. Senator from Louisiana, and they had their scandal. He was found, his name was found in the, I don't think people keep little black books anymore, but in the records of a woman who was known as the D.C. Madam, and he was a client. And once this was revealed, the Vitters kind of, made their pronouncement at a press conference. Well, flash forward many years later, and the next time a federal appointment for a judge opened up in that area, Donald Trump named Wendy Vitter to that appointment. So she, by staying in the marriage, she did advance her political career.
That's incredible. And I think Jackie Kennedy, she had to have known that John F. Kennedy was cheating on her. I mean, that's been well established. And, you just wonder, I kind of think of that theory. It was a movie. It was a book, too, the Stepford Wives. They're just like robotically living, their situation, a smile on your face. And also back in the 60s and even in Eleanor Roosevelt's time, you stayed with your husband.
Yeah.
It was expected of a woman to stay and support her husband even if he was cheating on her. Do you think that's also part of it with these two couples anyway, the Kennedys and the Roosevelts?
Oh, yeah. I think the Roosevelts, I don't think couples got divorced back then. I mean, at least not readily. And I think especially in their social circle, nobody got divorced. So I know by the time they had children, their children ended up getting several divorces. So, it became more common. But I think definitely Jackie and Jack Kennedy had dads who were stepping out on their wives and not too shy about it either. I mean, there were actually Joe Kennedy, there were, press reports, and Rose just looked the other way. So
yes.
I think that both of them sort of went into marriage thinking, well, this is what happens with powerful men.
Yes, I actually read a story. I don't know if this is true, but that Joe Kennedy had Gloria Swanson at the dinner table, and that Rose Kennedy knew that he was cheating on her. And then, of course, you had this whole social thing where if the sons see their father doing it and the mother accepting it, then they do think it's a normal part of life. Oh, yeah, I could get married and have my side dishes, so to speak. It's just incredible. And Donald Trump was married a couple of times before Melania, and I mean he's staying with this one so far. That's good. What would you like to say about their story?
Well, I think Melania is more transactional than many of the wives that I covered or in this book. I think she was very much wanting to live the American dream of coming here and I mean, she, was a successful and quite stunning model, and she could have married any number of men, wealthy men, but instead it was sort of she married a man with a big public profile. So I think, in this marriage she sort of had this instant recognizability, if that's a word, and just sort of, she married into a lot of status and fame by marrying Donald Trump.
Yes. That I think, in my own opinion, and I think for someone to marry into politics, and that here's a powerful guy, and that has to cause like a strain, I think, if they let it. But it must be very intimidating if you're not used to being out in the public. But she was used to being out, but she was a model, a very beautiful woman. And then you look at Donald Trump and thinking, how does he get such a beautiful young woman? But there are, and I'm saying Melania, but there are women who do marry just for, the status of what they could gain. Do you think that was the case in Melania?
I think probably they've both been quoted as saying that they have very similar way of looking at the world. They're both very ambitious. I think there's and people have said that when she's, like, for example, when she didn't move to Washington right away when he was first elected, apparently some of his people around him, his advisors, were saying, oh gosh, we got to get Melania down here. She really calms him down. So I think there's definitely a relationship there. But, I think she probably had a heads up that he was going to be a cheater. I mean, you have to look at his history. He was always, he would brag about his affairs and what women he had been out with. And I think that they broke up at one point, the Melania and Donald, and it was in the papers that she found out he had been seeing an old girlfriend, and that he was up to his old tricks, and then they got back together, obviously. And I think, she must have made some deal with herself in her mind. Well, maybe, this is, at some level, this is worth it for me. This is the deal I'm making. And I think, honestly, he's been a lot more subtle is the word coming to mind, but I there's a better word for it. He hasn't been as blatant with his carryings on since
right
to Melania. So I think maybe that was the deal is keep it quiet. Don't have it be in my face and in my newspaper and all that. So
right, they might have had a deal. Do your thing, but keep it quiet. I don't want to see it in the papers.
Mm-hmm.
Use a little finesse. And do it as quietly as possible. Yes. Could you refresh my memory, because I don't remember about Marion Stein and Jeremy Thorpe. What was that situation?
Sure. They're actually British, so that's probably why you don't know them. He was in Parliament in the 70s, and she was someone whose family had been moved on from Austria when the Nazis were coming into power, and she was in her teens, I think, and her family moved to England, and they were interned or on the Isle of Man. So there was a lack of money, a lack of security, a lack of safety, and lo and behold, she was a wonderful pianist, and she ended up meeting and marrying into the royal family in England. Well, that marriage worked out terribly for her. He tried for many years to get a divorce, and she sort of held out until she got some really good guarantees for her sons, 3 sons, and they were in terms of what title they would have in the nobility and money. And so then she married Jeremy, whose first wife had died very quickly. And what happened with them is he was accused of having had an affair decades earlier with a man. And this went to trial in Britain. And there's a movie about it now called A Very British Scandal with Hugh Grant. And so you can see what they went through. But they got through the trial. He lost his seat, but he didn't lose. He wasn't accused of there was a murder involved too. I mean, it was very a little bit of a crazy story. But I was interested in this one, especially because having a gay affair was illegal at the until very late in England, and so it was just, to me, a fascinating story. And she stayed with him. He got Parkinson's toward the end of his life. She stayed with him for many, many years, and just took care of him. So it was
wow.
I get really involved in these stories.
Yeah, oh wow, that's amazing. You know what? I thought there was a movie about him. I vaguely remember that, and I have to ask you about this other couple, though I can't even read my own handwriting. Huma and Anthony Weiner.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Huma
Go ahead. Oh, I thought, is he the one that took naked pictures of himself and texted?
Yeah.
I can't keep track of all these scandals.
I know. He was a congressman from New York, and young and very brash, and she was like a second daughter to Hillary Clinton. She's still on Hillary's staff. And he was tweeting pictures of himself, and apparently hit, reply all or something instead of sending it to one person. Later, he ran for mayor of New York, and the scandal came up again. There was a woman named Sydney Leathers who came forward and said he had been sexting her under the pseudonym Carlos Danger. And so the two of them, I think, are in the process of getting a divorce, but it's been very drawn out.
That's. I have to ask you this: how did you pick these 8 couples?
I guess there were plenty to choose from. Sadly enough,
I'm sure. Yes.
I just really focused on the people who interested me. I felt as though Eleanor and Jackie were kind of iconic in our society, in our politics. And I had another British couple and an Israeli couple in my previous first edition, but we had to make room for the Trumps, so they came out in the second edition. So, we have Marion Stein and Jeremy Thorpe, the British couple, Hillary and Bill Clinton, Wendy and David Vitter, Zilda Wall and Elliot Spitzer, Huma Abedin, Anthony Weiner, and then the Trumps. And I wanted to also go on both sides of the political spectrum. Some of these are conservatives and some are Democrats.
Right. It goes on both sides of the aisle, the scandals and the cheating. It's not reserved just for, one political party. I think it's interesting. I mean, even in every, day of life, I worked as a nurse. Doctors often cheated on their wives, not all doctors, but, you had these nurses, and I saw it with my own eyes, throw themselves at these doctors. And the wives probably knew. The ones that didn't know, I guess, turned the other way because they didn't want to give up their, lifestyle, their way of living. And I think it's that way with a lot of these politicians' wives. And, back in the day of especially Eleanor Roosevelt, like I said before, just divorce wasn't an option, really, at that time for women. But Eleanor was also involved in politics. I mean, she did a lot with, supporting, the war and encouraging the GIs and the service men and women. And I think that Eleanor Roosevelt, in some ways, was ahead of her time because she was very.
I think so.
I think she was outspoken.
Yeah, but she didn't see that before she found out about this affair that her husband was having. I mean, she sort of made lemonade out of lemons. She started sort of, in a way, maybe saying, well, if this marriage isn't the be-all and end-all for me, maybe I can do something else. Maybe I can. She started writing a 6-day-a-week column in the newspaper to let people know that even though these were hard times in the Depression and World War II, the White House was listening, and she advocated for many social reforms that we have now, Social Security and other things. So I think, in a way, her disappointment in marriage sort of propelled her to become the public figure that she was.
That's interesting, and I think, especially nowadays, with divorce being very common, that you might see a politician's wife say, I'm not going to deal with this, I'm going to get divorced. It might be, they might work it out where it's after, they're elected into office or whatever the situation is, but now it would be more accepted now. I think to have a divorced president or governor or, whoever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Than it was way back when. This is very interesting. Yeah, I think it's fascinating because I used to ask myself that when I would, hear about it and see it, you wonder, what is going, I often ask myself, what is going through their mind? And do you think they felt public humiliation? Because I know I would.
I just think that my heart goes out to all of them, the men and the women involved. Although the men brought it on, you could say they brought it on themselves. But I really feel like the public nature of this is what must be so just adding insult to injury.
And I have to say that it takes a lot of guts, a lot of class to still smile and when you feel that humiliated and just keep on going. I just couldn't even imagine the whole world knowing my business and being able to have to sit there with a smile on my face. That's I admire them for that. I really do, because that takes it takes a lot. when you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the women, they do have their different reasons for staying in their marriage to their husbands. And, some people, it is a power thing. I think that's the way it was with Hillary. That's my, a personal opinion, folks, that she wanted to be president. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure she was very disappointed when she wasn't, because she was so close. But she's still with Bill, and who knows? She could be running again in 2024. Who knows?
Yeah. I think maybe not, but yeah, I think that she loves her husband and loves their family, but there's some indication that she knew what kind of man, what kind of husband he would be. He had affairs before they were married, and she had some hints about that. So I think she also made a deal with herself, and I think she told a friend one time there are more important things than fidelity. So
right.
Just being, connected intellectually, and what other ways, I don't know, but maybe that was a big part of her reason for staying with Bill.
Yes, we never know what goes on behind other people's closed doors. Mm-hmm. Their arrangements, their interactions, their reasons for staying. You would have to, I would imagine, you would have to really love someone to overlook a lot of the things. Mm-hmm. That's for sure. I mean, I know personally I would not be able to overlook that, but I wasn't married to a politician, so I don't know. That's a whole different area that I was never, part of. But I think, especially in Eleanor Roosevelt's time and Jackie Kennedy's, that they were sort of groomed, so to speak, to, you're the wife, and this is what you have to do. This is what is expected of you. Doesn't matter if they're cheating or drinking or, even in some cases, women back in those times stayed with their husbands even if they were being physically abused. And they just had to take it because there was no way out at that time. So I think that they are groomed to expect, these things. And I really want to thank you, Anne, for coming on Chatting with Betsy and talking about your book and these fascinating, powerful couples. And I know that the audience can get the book on Amazon.com, the bestseller, folks.
Correct.
Correct. Yes, and congratulations.
And it's also on Barnes & Noble and IndieBound if you want to support independent bookstores, and also Books A Million if you want to buy them that way. So thank you for having me on your show. Thank you for the fun chat and the opportunity to talk about my book. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. If you write another book, you just come back on. I'd love to interview you again. This was fun. I was like a fascinating subject, really, because I think people do think about that. Why are they staying? That's the truth. And, why do some people why do they stay? And there's a lot of questions involved with that, a lot of answers for that question. And I want to thank you again, Anne, Michaud, for coming on. Folks, you know what? If you want to support your local bookstore like Barnes & Noble, if they don't have a book, you can ask them to order it for you. They do that. I know that for a fact. And I would recommend getting this book. It has great reviews on Amazon.com. And I forgot to say this in the beginning of the show. I have to do a disclaimer. The views of the guest may not represent those of the host or the station. And if you missed any of this podcast, you could catch it again wherever you hear your favorite podcast. I highly suggest subscribing to Chatting with Betsy, wherever you hear your podcast. It is for free, and you never know who I will be having on. I have a lot of wonderful guests on, if I have to say so myself. And I do. I have wonderful guests on. And I want to thank you again, Anna Show, for coming on. And I want to thank Jeannie White, who is the station manager, Passion World Talk Radio, for running the blog, producing the show. I want to thank Lillian Caldwell, who's CEO, Passion World Talk Radio, who makes this all possible. And I want to thank you, the audience, for listening. Please share this podcast, and please keep listening, and I appreciate it. And in a world where you can be anything, folks, please be kind. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate Rural Talk Radio. Bye-bye now.
Are you looking for an internet talk radio station for your podcast? Look no further. At the helm of Passionate World Talk Radio are two women that want to provide a spot for you and your podcast to be heard. There are many other places for your podcast, but PWTR has the audience. You will not be disappointed. Our station has been on the internet for the past 16 years. Call us for more information. 484-364-1032 or text Jeannie White, station manager, at THECONNECTSHOW@gmail.com for podcast show details. Thank you for listening to Passionate World Talk Radio. You can listen to this program all over again by going over to https://passionateworldtalkradio.com. You can also hear it on Spotify, Spreaker, Amazon Alexa, AMFM247.com every Tuesday evening between 8 and 9 p.m. YouTube, Facebook, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, and all the other podcast directories one can find on the internet.